Coming up next on Access-Framingham TV, Travels with Jack, with my special guests, Elsa and Dave Hornfischer. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Jack Barron, host of Travels with Jack, here on Access-Framingham TV, where guests share with our audience a recent trip, a vacation, a cruise, or maybe even a day trip right here in beautiful New England. You'll see their photos and hear about the exciting places they've visited. My guests today are Elsa and Dave Hornfischer. In September 2019, Elsa and Dave visited the British Isles. They join me now to share their exciting trip with you. What parts of the world have you visited? Please be my guest on Travels with Jack. Share your travel experience with our viewing audience. Just contact us here at Access-Framingham Television and let us know you'd like to be a guest. You can phone AFTV at 508-875-5434, or you can send me an email message to info@accessfram.tv. One of our associate producers will contact you to make arrangements for you to be on our show, here on Access-Framingham TV. If you do not live in Massachusetts, we would be more than pleased to assist you with your travel to the Access-Framingham studio. And now, let me welcome Elsa and Dave back to Travels with Jack. A quick biography. Dave and Elsa Hornfischer, 36-year residents in the city of Framingham. Both are retired from their previous employment. Elsa was a registered nurse, and her last job was with the Autistic Center in Southborough, where Elsa was an early team member of the start of that organization here in Southborough. Dave was chief financial officer at Berklee College of Music in Boston for more than 25 years, and they share a son and a daughter and 7 wonderful grandchildren. I asked them if they were still wonderful grandchildren. They said yes. Currently, Dave is the host of a show here on Access Framingham Television, Fan to Fan, a sports talk show. And Elsa has been very active with the Framingham Arts Organizations and the Framingham History Center. Elsa has also been very active in the downtown Framingham Renaissance, which she has set back a little bit. You're going to share with us today a fabulous 14-day British Isles. I asked them if they were still part of Britain. They said, so far. We don't know with Brexit. And Dave and Elsa were joined on the trip with their son, Jim, and his wife, Sharon. Welcome. We made it today, bad weather and all.
Great to be back with you, Jack.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Always great.
So we were talking a little bit before the show. This the trip was arranged by a travel agent out of Texas who was a friend of Jim and Sharon.
Yes.
And how did you join? Did they fly to Boston to meet you and you all flew together, or did you fly separately? How did the trip get started?
No, we all flew to London. We all landed at different times at Heathrow. And
okay. So they left
travel
Texas, you left here.
And the travel agent and the cruise people picked us up and took us by bus down to the White Cliffs of Dover. At Dover, where we boarded the ship. I think we have some photos of that coming up in the very beginning here.
So, did you spend much time in the White Cliffs of Dover area, or they really just use that as you embarked on the ship?
We boarded the ship there, and
That was it. So
and
you didn't get to see too much of the London area or anything on this particular cruise.
well, we'll get to that at the end of the trip. We did spend a day on a bus trip through London.
So I'm going to assume that some people might have come in 3-4 days early.
Sure, some people
and
did.
stayed in London,
Yeah.
and then went to
Right.
the White Cliffs to
Right.
get on the ship.
Yes.
Okay, great. And Bill, we can probably roll with photos. You got a lot of photos today. Here
Yeah,
we go.
okay.
This starts.
We're starting at Heathrow. That was as we were on the bus leaving the airport. They had this little, display of a thing. We can move by that quickly. And the next picture coming up,
Slow
there's
down.
the ship.
I want to see. There's the ship.
That's what you want to see.
Now, this was what you said about a 600-passenger ship.
That's the Pacific Princess. Was originally, I think, the ship for Love Boat, although it had been completely redone.
Oh, yeah, they redo it. For those who aren't familiar with cruising, 600 passengers is a nice size ship. That's considered a midship. If you noticed, I don't know when we'll actually show this TV show, but this week there were people on 5,000 passenger ships stuck in Japan, stuck in China with the
flu.
coronavirus there and everything. So that's a nice size ship to be on, 500-600 passengers. This I can't make out, Dave. What is this?
Yeah, that doesn't come across too well. That's actually the trip that started in London, went through.
That's your itinerary.
Through the English Channel, into the Irish Sea, up through the out into the Atlantic Ocean, up around the North Sea, and came back down. We were very fortunate. We had smooth sailing, because when one thinks of those bodies of water, one thinks of seasickness. And this trip was as smooth as the studio floor. I mean,
you had a nice deck.
That's
now,
the deck.
was it a little too? This was September. Did you have any pool days?
No.
No pool days.
Temperatures were in the 50s and 60s most days. That's a picture I took from having breakfast one morning out on one of the outer.
I
we
see
sat
calm
outside.
seas.
That's a nice picture of the ocean. And
there's
that's our
Miss
room.
Elsa.
We had an inner cabin, and you don't spend a lot of time in your cabin. And I personally think anybody that pays up for fancy cabins on a cruise is just wasting money. I mean, we slept in that room, we kept our stuff there, we took a shower, and we went to sleep.
Now this is one of the dining rooms.
This is
so
the
they have
buffet
a big
line.
buffet.
That's the big buffet line where we had our breakfast there every day.
Yeah, you can see it's up to date. They redid the ship.
And then that's dinner at night. That's our waiter, Albert Mel. It was from Thailand, Singapore, I think, and he waited on us and our son and his wife every night, and brought us good ice cream, extra ice cream. Sometime he'd bring us 2 entrees if we couldn't decide. He turned into a 14-night friend. I mean,
little more, still calm seas.
the sunset, yeah.
Cocktail time. Now, let me ask you this. Did you get a chance to find out where a lot of the other passengers were from?
A little bit, not too, because we were with our son and our daughter-in-law. We spent dinner with them, and we went out on about 3 or 4 of the formally organized ship tours.
Excursions.
Where we met. But those were generally overpriced, and you could probably see what you wanted to see pretty much on your own, and take a local train or a bus or.
Yeah, but for people who aren't familiar with the area, it's an easy way to get going. Yeah. But did you get a sense, were they mostly Americans, would you say, on this ship, or?
I would say mostly.
Mostly.
However, what I noticed was that a very large group of the people tended to stick together. There were groups that
So you're saying there were groups who came as groups?
Yes.
There was a large group from the Albany area, for example, that the travel agent had coordinated.
Sure, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So in other words, there might have been 10 couples, they all kind of knew each other, or the travel agent put it together and said, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
I gotcha.
And we enjoyed...
Is this your son?
No, that's not our son.
Oh, okay.
This was one of the great things on this trip is the entertainment was terrific.
It was
and they had.
unbelievable.
I'd heard before people said the entertainment sometimes was just kind of the same comics all night. This was the complete opposite. There was one comic who was great. This was there was when we were in Dublin, they brought in an Irish troupe. When we were in Edinburgh, they brought in a group of Edinburgh, including bagpipes. This guy came on the last night of the trip. His name is Nick Page, and he was in Les Mis and some of the shows in London, and Elsa, and we saw him twice. And the second night, Elsa, he recognized Elsa, and well, go ahead, you finish the story about you and Nick.
I loved his music. His voice was extraordinary. The stage was pretty large. And we just enjoyed the show so much, but I learned just how he has had a very long career, and he has a very great voice. And after the show, I was walking by.
So you started the Nick fan club.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I kind of
With
did.
the president.
And I said, I gave him a hug, and I said, thank you so much.
We have
for
this
your
one little
beautiful
almost like
music."
video picture of when she walks up. He recognizes her from the night before.
There's a nice picture of the two of you. Where is this?
That's
Dave?
the White Cliffs of Dover.
Oh,
when they
okay,
started.
so this
you
is
asked about
while
that.
you were just taking
Yeah,
off.
And there they are again.
So
we're
this,
looking
I'm
over.
assuming,
The
has become a
bluebirds
major
flying over.
cruise ship port
Yeah,
for London.
Dover and Southampton are the two places.
Southampton. That's
Yeah.
what I've always heard.
Yes, right. This is out of sequence, this picture is. This was from the
all
Orkney
right.
That's all right.
Islands.
This is where?
That was up in the Orkney Islands where there's more sheep and cows than there are people. But and anyway, let's move on from that picture. That doesn't belong here.
Now, look, we got a video. Where is this?
Oh my God, this is all out of order.
That's all right. Help me get through it, Dave.
I think that's the Orkneys.
The Orkney Islands.
Yeah. Well, that was fairly near the end of the trip.
That's all right. And there are look, this is what you were telling me.
Well, this was a castle in the Orkneys that goes back to the year 500 or something. It goes
Really?
way back, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And these are
the standing stones this is the Ring of Brognar in the Orkneys.
in the Orkney Islands.
In the Orkneys. These
and
go
this
back
is
to
similar,
20
you told me what? To Stonehenge.
to Stonehenge, but these are 1,000 years older. These go back to 2,500 years
Really?
before Christ, yes.
Wow. And you said they weigh what?
A lot.
A lot.
This gives you a size of the scope of them. This guy was out mowing, chopping down some of the grass, but I mean, he's probably 6 feet tall. These are about 15, 20 feet high.
And no explanation for how they got them in place?
I think the best answer came on the show, The Ancient Aliens, that we saw, where we think these were helped by people who were not originally humans. I'm a believer in that.
Well,
It sounds crazy, but
it's hard to explain.
I mean, there's so many of them.
How
There's
they
another.
put them in position.
Yeah, there's another one of there are originally 62 of these in this big circle. There's 27 of them standing currently.
They know there were 62.
By the ground where they can see where they were in the ground. And,
So what happened to them? They got cut up?
They were
or
stolen or beaten up in wars or whatever, I guess. Who knows?
Highland Park Distillery. There we go.
That's some of the good scotch from the Orkneys, the Highland
Oh,
Park.
the Orkneys, they do
Yes.
distill.
Yes, oh yes.
Oh, yes.
The Orkneys, the Isle of Skye has their distillery. I think there were two in the. They have a good beer there as well.
Another live video. These are terrific.
Okay, this is in Edinburgh. This was a bagpiper on the streets, adding a little color to the street scene.
And Elsa, while I got a second, you are of Scottish heritage.
I am.
So-
and Irish, and I never knew much about it, but
Her mother
But-
was a Cummings.
my mother was a Cummings, and yeah, and I've learned so much since, really.
See, the only thing I know about the Cummings are diesel engines.
That's a different
Cummings
spelling.
engine, different
Well,
spelling.
interestingly enough, the Cummins name, the spelling changed down the years. We'll get into that with some of the other
Now,
slides.
this is a statue of Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. This is one of the statues on the street in Edinburgh.
And he, of course, was a famous economist.
Yeah, that's the castle at Edinburgh.
Oh,
which,
there was a big castle.
Oh yeah,
there.
there's huge crowds going into that every year. We had been through this on a previous trip, so we didn't
Is
go
this
into.
still an active castle? That's my question.
No, it's a
No.
tourist attraction.
Tourist, okay.
That's one of the many pubs on the streets of Edinburgh. We have a lot of pub pictures.
And Edinburgh, I assume you thought was a very attractive city.
Yes, this is the cathedral.
We had on Travels with Jack years ago some kids who had gone on a singing trip to Scotland and to Edinburgh. I remember.
Oh my God.
And this is what, a cathedral?
It's a cathedral I think it's the Giles Cathedral in the center of Edinburgh.
Oh, beautiful.
And that's one of the many windows in there. That picture doesn't do it justice, but
Similar architecture to Westminster.
probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wild and majestic, romantic visions of Scotland. What
While
is that?
that is the National Museum of Scotland, and that was the show they had. And we went in there and spent some interesting time, and we even got into some of the research of Elsa's Cummins family.
Oh, that's
and,
where the
and those slides will
information
come up
was.
soon. Yes. But they had a great exhibit there. This was a terrific museum. When we had been there before, we hadn't gone into this museum, so we kind of
So this was one of the things you definitely wanted to
right.
get a chance to visit.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one of the items they had on display there, that is an original Apple I computer.
Oh, really?
Shows the chips and the boards in the suitcase and the original keyboard and
Gee, they've come a long way.
They've come a long way to my iPhone. Yes, they have. Now this is the Cummins.
Yes, which you also, you'll hold it up for us
Right.
later.
Yep.
And show us, there it is.
Yep,
same
there's
thing.
the,
They won't be able to see you yet, but when we'll get a picture of it. And that is Elsa's.
Courage. Elsa's family heritage.
That's,
a
is
piece
that
of it.
your crest? That's
Yes,
your
the crest.
family crest.
Courage,
Yeah.
it says on it.
Well, when we get a
Okay.
chance, we'll have one of the video folks
The
take a
name there
picture.
says Cumming, and it's now Cummings, and it was originally, as the next slide will show, was originally spelled C-O-M-Y-N.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Can we move on? We seem.
Oh, there
There
it
we go.
is. I see.
So-
Robert the Bruce's rivals, the Comyns. So was pronounced the same way though? Cumming?
Yes,
or
probably
Common?
Cummins. Well, whatever. However they said it
Okay.
with a Scottish brogue. But this was around the year 1306. Robert the Bruce, and these were similar to the time of William Wallace that everybody knows from Braveheart. Robert the Bruce and the Cummins they both claimed right to be king of Scotland. And the British tried to, and they were both against the British. Edward I, and Bruce eventually stabs John the Red Cummin in the cathedral at Dumfries in 1306.
And that's when Elsa's family said, we got to get out of here.
And that's when they changed their name to the
400
Cummings.
years.
That's when the name became Cummings, because the Cummins sort of sided with the British at that point. And now Elsa has all this great lineage, and I have this hat because my ancestry is German. Okay,
Well, we can do another show. You'll go to Germany.
we've done that. Yeah.
Germany's an interesting. I like Germany.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
Oh, this was the Cummins. Well, they got me up here. There's the little thing we had with the. This was one of the trinkets that
here,
we
I'll
bought.
get this.
We're not big travel. No, that's fine. That's good enough.
Well, we'll show
Okay.
it. There it is coming.
Okay.
Which is always interesting. The tartan plaids. Well, let me move on to this.
Well,
Robert the
that's
Bruce's
a little
rivals.
piece of the book. We went into the research library, and they had these two great books. I showed the cover of one, and inside the book they had a lot of the details of the Cummins family. They had pictures of the family tree, and we haven't quite got this down to Elsa's relatives yet. But they had the story there about the murder and where he stabs him.
I know one thing, that I didn't know much about genealogy when I was younger, but at all. But I had this grandmother and grandfather that came through Canada, and of course a lot of the Scotch and Irish
Nova Scotia.
came through.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
came
then
through
on to
Canada.
Ontario.
And my grandfather was a carpenter, and of course a lot of carpentry was done in their transition from from the horror of Scotland and Ireland at the time, and when they moved to Canada, and he spent a lot of time cutting down trees in Canada and everything. And my grandmother could make anything, which women had to do back then. So she was always a quilter and
Yeah.
but it was interesting. There's a lot I don't know.
Yeah, no, genealogy is.
We've been doing Ancestry.com, and we've had a chance
and you
to
found a
dive
lot of
back.
stuff on that.
We've had pictures of some of the Cummings that originally came to Canada and their marriages.
You know,
and,
it's funny. I have one friend and his family. They go back a long time, and they set up a web page where all the different cousins
Yes.
and relatives. And
We have that.
You have
Yeah.
that too.
Sort of. We have a
Sort
big
of.
family tree. I've got like 900 names in it
And
now.
they interchange
Yeah.
Yeah.
and talk, and they have different meetings every so often. It's
Right.
really quite something I guess the internet only could develop.
Yeah.
Where they have all this family
It's
lineage.
fascinating.
Yes,
Just
absolutely,
fascinating.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now this is Tiny Mouth, is that it?
Tynemouth on the River Tyne. This is kind of interesting the way these are sequencing, because was at the very end of the trip. We were we went to Newcastle, was the last stop, and we took the train at Tynemouth and did a ride around the city of Newcastle and went to downtown. But this was an outdoor flea market that they have apparently every Thursday at the train station, and this was probably a quarter of an acre, or at least an acre maybe, of just booths of all kinds of stuff and food, and it was kind of fun.
Fascinating.
At the train station.
Yeah, oh, that's nice.
This rivals South Station.
South Station, I guess, is going to get a new 650 or 700 foot skyscraper.
And this was in a
Don't hold
teeny
your
town.
breath.
Oh, don't-
Yeah,
really?
This was in a teeny town.
No, they'll build it. They'll build it. Oh,
But
and this
is actually called Skye Dundum. This was where Hadrian had established a village. This was
You're saying Emperor Hadrian from the Roman Empire?
in the year 120 built Hadrian's Wall, which pretty much is the line between Scotland and England today. And they had this little fort there. The fort is gone, but this was the remnant. This was the base of the fort, and there's a museum over it. There was a Roman fort, baths. There's a museum there, and it's called Skye Dundum.
Really?
Skye Dundum.
I know London actually was part of the Roman Empire. I did not know they were up this far.
Well, the history here is fascinating. You know, when you start with those rocks that we saw 2500 BC,
Yep.
you get to the Norse coming down and settling in Cornwall. We have a picture later on
So
of
the
a
Vikings.
tower, the Vikings, and then you get the Romans in the year around the time of Christ, shortly after, and then you get the people coming over from France,
Oh, okay, the Huguenots or the-
no, that was German. In 1066 when when they actually settled England, and then we have Elsa's relatives,
and Elsa's relatives.
Robert the Bruce.
Well, my relatives had a castle, and we discovered this castle. It had been destroyed.
the Cummings had a lot of castles.
A lot of castles.
They were
13 or 14.
Yeah.
But one of them, we actually climbed the stairs. Half of the castle was broken all over the ground, and half of the stairs were still there, and we were younger then.
Really?
This
So
was on
we-
our previous trip. Yeah.
This is on a previous trip, yeah. And we kind of climbed up I always was pretty proud that we were able to climb the Cummings Castle, and there
No,
are still two Cummingses, two women that work at what is
Well, they have a brewery, and
They have a
there's
brewery.
a
Right below the
distillery. A
castle.
distillery. It's
Where's your family today, Elsa? They're brewers.
distillers.
and one
Distillers.
of the husband's a distiller. Good Scottish business.
Right.
right.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's see where the next photo brings us.
You never
to.
know the way these are
That's all
ordered.
right. It keeps it interesting.
Okay,
Now, this
that's
is
a little
what?
piece of Hadrian's Wall that's still
Back to
standing.
Hadrian.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're still
Isn't
in.
that? I did not know that the Roman Empire really stretched all the way
Yeah,
up.
all the way
into
up.
northern
Yeah, it did.
Scotland.
Yeah. Wall's
this
End.
was
Wall's End is
long.
the name of the town. They said they couldn't think of a very creative name. They have Wall's End. They have Newcastle. They had
Well,
at
look
the
at
museum.
Massachusetts. We just stole the names from over there.
Well, there's so many of them. You'll see more Massachusetts names
the only
later
thing
on.
I can think of in Massachusetts that's native is Chicopee, maybe. Everything else is,
Yeah, Cochituate. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but Cochituate's what, really part of Wayland, isn't it?
I know, but it's, yeah. So they had a cartoon exhibit in there, and this is kind of funny. It shows the guy saying to the Romans, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. But they had some great cartoons there, and it was one of the exhibits in the museum at Sege Dunham. And this is downtown, one of the attractive buildings.
It is. It's a good-looking building.
That's in Newcastle. Coals to Newcastle, the old saying. So that was one of the last stops on the trip, and we took the train around that area.
That is. I like that building. You got a big
that's
clock
beautiful.
up there. Now, what is that, kind of a center of the town?
Right in the town square in the
Okay.
center. Yeah, there was somebody up there doing some kind of a religious recruitment. In
Any
the center
particular
of the square.
Scottish dishes or foods that you remember that you kind of liked? Or
Well, fish and chips was sort
Okay.
of the food, and we have a great picture later on of us having a fish and chips lunch. Was fabulous, better than anything you ever get in America.
right, it was.
Okay.
Now, what is this?
Well, this is one of the pubs in Newcastle,
Oh,
the
okay.
Charles Gray. We have, as I said, we had a lot of pub pictures. That's sort of the thing I think that's most interesting of the whole British Isles. Is everywhere you go, the pubs are just.
And most of them are decorated beautifully with flowers and adornment, and they're beautiful.
So a nice place to go in and be
Yes,
comfortable.
yeah.
Reminds me of Eileen's basement a little bit. Where
That's a picture of the ship the last day as we were leaving the ship and about to go on our one-day bus excursion through London. Maybe the London pictures are coming up next. The order of these is puzzling
That's all
me.
right. Well, that's okay.
Okay, yeah, now
Here
we're in
we are
London.
in
This is
London.
the last day of the trip. We took a cruise-sponsored trip through London. We're going over the London Tower Bridge. That's the Tower of London right in front of us. They're a little fuzzy, the pictures are, because I was taking them through the windows of the thing with my iPhone camera. All these pictures were iPhone.
That's all right. They're
Yeah.
pretty. Yeah, I think they're pretty
Yeah.
good.
And there's another one of the same picture of the same shot. And that's
the
another.
famous Ferris wheel there in London.
And the London Bridge, and the little bit of the skyline of London. It was fascinating. We've traveled a lot, and we'd never been to London, so we thought, well,
it's a great city.
Well, with this one-day ride through it gave us the overview.
Did you get a
the
chance
whole-
to go to the where the crown jewels were and everything?
We didn't go in any buildings.
Oh, okay.
No, we were on a bus.
We had one stop at Buckingham Palace, and we'll have a couple
Your
pictures
next
of that
trip,
coming
if you're
up.
back in Europe, spend a few days in London. It's wonderful.
Oh, we've
You'll-
wanted to.
Oh yeah, you'll see Westminster and the crown jewels. You can go out to Windsor, take a train. It's about a half an hour.
Right.
It's well worth seeing.
Yeah.
It's a very nice. In fact, it's putting me in the mood. I want to go. But let me see what Bill has next for us. Back to London.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Just a nice arty picture, I think. The artwork along the bridges there is fun. The
I'm waiting to see
clouds,
James Bond fly in.
Yeah, well,
somewhere.
I know. The background with the
Yep.
clouds there, it almost looks like the United States in the cloud I'm kind of seeing there with my Rorschach image.
Again, you had
Nice
nice weather,
skyline
though.
of
Not a
London.
lot of
And there's
rain.
another
No,
London Bridge
it was
with,
rare.
I think that's
Very
is that the
rare.
Royal Court in back of us? It might be. I have a. We can go through there. That's Lord Nelson atop the tower at Trafalgar Square. That's a beautiful tower with this famous admiral standing atop it. I think that's the London Court, I believe.
Is that what it is?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't, the guide was, we went through this rather quickly, so. Although the traffic was terrible, so.
Oh yeah.
So we did have time to take some good still pictures.
And the streets were very narrow.
Well, some of
Very.
those.
'Cause
They're
horses
fabulous
used to-
taxis.
That's what I always thought a London taxi would look like.
Yeah.
And they look like that, and there were some of these yet. But coming up, the next picture shows what the capitalist world has done to most of the taxis, is they now have ads all over them.
I don't know if they explained it to you, but to be a London taxi driver, you have to go through a school and
Yes.
pass tests. And
It's-
you have to know where all kinds of things are located and answer all kinds of questions.
And the streets aren't numbered like New York.
No, but it's quite a
my.
professional accomplishment to say I'm a London taxi driver.
But I think
Yeah.
I think Uber and Lyft are taking over there. But
They may be, I'm sure they're involved, but I
They
think
are.
still the taxis
Yeah.
have their education. It's quite different.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
talk about the roads. You said the Romans were there.
Yeah, right.
That's when the roads
right,
started.
yes, they were. Yes. That's a sign of the traffic. There you got 5 of those famous London double-decker buses all coming together as we were, and we were in the 6th one, I guess, looking out and trying to figure out how this bus is ever going to
It
get down
looks to
this
me
street.
like actually for just one day there, you got around pretty good.
It was about 4 or 5 hours we had,
Yeah,
all on our tour bus.
but it looks like you.
That was
you saw
kind of
quite a
that
bit
was an
there.
interesting moment. I thought that photo kind of captured traffic
The
in
colors.
London.
And this is another pub.
The next few slides coming up are some of the London pubs, which were just so artfully designed, either as Elsa said, with flowers or the artwork. And
I think some of those pubs are hundreds of years old.
Oh,
they
I
are,
bet.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they all have great histories inside
Yes.
of them of famous things that have happened, and it would be fun just to do a pub tour of
That would be fun,
about 20
yeah.
pubs in London, I think, and
And
hear
the
some of them.
story of each one, the history. Yeah.
There's probably books or something.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure there are. Yeah.
And then back to Scotland, you found the pubs. Well, now we're
This
still
is
in.
still, yeah, these are London. This is another
Still
London
London.
pub. I forget which one this is. I think you can sort of see the name, but we can go through these rather quickly. There's about 5 or 6 of them.
Oh,
like
that
Barrow
was
Boy and
beautiful.
Banker, and that's a pub.
Yeah, and
I don't know what a
that's
Barrow
the
Boy
flowers.
is.
And on the letters there, it says something about gin. G is for gin. That's what
gin,
it's in the letters on the windows.
G is for gin.
But this is
Twining
tea.
Teas.
Yeah, so
Yep.
we went by the Twining Tea building, and it was a little kind of a tall, skinny building, and they had the Twining name in there. They was,
Yep.
kind of interesting pictures on the top
They
with the
make
Asians.
beautiful teas.
Yeah. That's a Wellington pub.
That's a beauty.
Look at all the
I love
flowers and
that.
And
plants
this is
they all
this
have, huh?
interestingly is right at the end of the theater district.
Yeah, I see the Lion
you see
King.
the ad for the Lion King there when we drove down the street where the theater district was, which is another thing of London I would like to explore someday. And there's one of the theaters they're having a show, Grown Ups, I guess. A London taxi going by, and this is Winston Churchill in the park. The statues are in there are just terrific. It's sort of the public art throughout the city. Now we're at the edge of Buckingham Palace. They're having a tour. Their tour guide. Oh no, that's that's Parliament. I think there was a protest going on at the Parliament having to do with Brexit. And
Oh.
people were all outside, and you can see the guards on the horses. It might have been Buckingham Palace. I'm not sure what it was.
It looks like could
but
be
I think
like
it
the
was
changing of the guard.
I think it was at Downing. I think it was at the Parliament, though.
As of this showing, Brexit has been somewhat accomplished.
Yes,
That's right.
Yeah,
I don't think they have an agreement with the
Yeah,
EU,
it
but
was
they
in the-
have voted and they're out.
it was in the confusion stage when
Yep.
when we were there, and the people we talked to were mixed. Some people thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and others thought it just didn't make any sense. And
Well, I think that's why they needed a vote.
yeah, and the vote was pretty close. but,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they needed a vote because they weren't quite sure,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
what they wanted to do, what the people wanted.
Right.
But be interesting. Okay, this is
That's
still
the
London.
that's the tower. That's the famous.
That's Big Ben.
Big
maybe?
Ben, that's
You're
Big
kidding.
Ben, that's
they're
Big Ben.
doing maintenance.
They say they always leave one side unrenovated so you can see it because they're working on it. They had scaffolding all over it, so it didn't quite get the full nature of Big Ben.
Yeah, I didn't
but,
even recognize it.
I know,
Oh, my
it's hardly.
goodness.
It took me by surprise.
Those said they're working on it.
Yes, that
And I
was
think
insane.
that's
There's
Westminster,
Westminster,
Abbey
yep.
along the river. Yeah. We didn't get too good of a pass by of that. It was about as close as we got. It was a little.
Did you take a little boat trip on the Thames, or is this
No, this
from
was
the
riding on the
bridge?
bridge. That's
Oh,
on the
okay.
bridge. We're just on the bus on the bridge. that's a place I'd like to, if I could have gone into some place, that's where I would have liked to have gone in. I would have thought that would have been spectacular. But,
Well, Westminster Abbey is well worth.
yes,
Yeah.
I know, right.
Oh, I know that statue. That's beautiful.
That's right at Buckingham Palace, at the edge of the gardens on the side of Buckingham Palace. The tour bus dropped us off right there and told us we had like 45 minutes to walk around, and the tour bus then had to move on in London traffic, and we were all terrified we weren't going to find the bus. So we didn't go too far. We wandered into a little pub and had a lousy piece of coffee.
Oh, now you told me this was your Christmas card this year.
That's Elsa
It's a
and I
nice photo.
at the gate to Buckingham Palace. We've been
Yep.
watching The Crown on Netflix, and every time we see the gate, we say, "Oh, there's our gate." But
It's a beautiful gate.
but they weren't going to let us in, and in fact,
Well, they knew Elsa was a Cummings.
Well, that's right. That's right.
What makes you think they're going to let her in?
and that guy was going to make sure we weren't going to go.
No Cummings here. We remember
He wasn't
your
even going to
family.
let us into the privy. That was the end of the trip. That was sort of the last part of the trip. Maybe we'll go back to the beginning now and kind of relive the trip.
Papa, what is that?
That's kind of funny. One of the places the first stop that we had was on the Channel Island of Jersey.
Oh, yes.
And as you came in off the dock, they had all the letters. A is for
Apple.
B is for that. Well, P was for Papa, and that's what my grandkids call me. So I had to take that picture. Proof that I own the place. This was
Tapestry Gallery. This
was a museum that they had on Jersey. During World War II, the Germans actually conquered and took over this island in the English
Oh,
Channel.
I never knew that.
And that's our daughter-in-law Sharon in the picture there. And she's about to go into this museum where they have all these wonderful tapestries that the local women put together after the English had got back their island. But for it was over a year, I think. This was a Nazi.
The Germans actually
Nazi controlled the
occupy it, huh?
people. They limited what the people could do, and it was a terrible period for the people there. The people felt that the British government had basically abandoned them because the British felt there was no way they could chase the Nazis out of there initially.
Oh, and those, I love the artwork behind these.
Those tapestries.
I'll have to read about that.
There's about 20 or 30 of these. Yeah, St. Helier, and that was one of the pictures.
They're stunning.
Yeah, the
You know,
was
you
like
talk
a
about
lot of them.
authentic names in America. I think we have a state, New Jersey.
We do.
So do you think maybe they must
That's
have
true. Well, this
picked that up
and this
from
is
the
Weymouth.
Jersey Island?
Yeah, and it turns out this is Weymouth.
Oh, Weymouth.
Yeah, now we're in
Another
Weymouth.
unique
Another
name.
little. This is right on the coast, and it's I think a real place where a lot of the English go to for days at the sea. It's a nice right on the southern coast of England. Very, very, very warm there. Here and in Cornwall, you actually saw palm trees.
Really?
Yeah. And now this, you
Oh,
asked
there's
about
your fish
food.
and chips.
That's the fish and fish and chips. When you get it here, it's good. But the fish and chips pieces there were all 10 inches long. I mean, look at this, and it was so good. The coating, it was. I have new
You
respect
like that
for
batter.
I have new respect. Batter up, I just had new respect for real
Well,
fish
you
and
know,
chips.
speaking for Massachusetts, I don't know, we have a different style of fish and chips if you go to New Bedford Fall River.
Really?
I
Yes.
bet.
Yeah.
New Bedford, they always serve with the malt vinegar.
Oh yeah. Oh, it makes it so good.
No, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's
Yes.
different if you go
I
to
know.
Beverly in that area. It's a little bit different.
Really?
It really
Oh,
does
I'll
vary.
have to check
Yeah, I
that.
love fish and chips, so when I'm in different areas, I get it. And
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah.
Different batters, different bread, everything.
So then the next day after the Jersey Isles, we went to Cornwall. After Weymouth, this was Cornwall. There's Cornwall in Connecticut.
Yep.
And this was one of the little villages there. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but
That's
it was very
all right. It
quaint.
looks probably the same.
Very
It looked,
quaint.
welcome to the world famous signpost at Land's End.
And we went out to
Is
Land's
that where they
End.
got the clothing company's name from? Maybe.
Could be. This is the most western point of England, and this is where, if you're coming across the ocean, you might see land first. And it's just a gorgeous outpost with the rocks that are all around there. We've got a few pictures coming up here of that's their world famous signpost where they say so many miles to New York,
Right.
and so many miles to Tokyo or whatever. But and so this is kind of a few pictures of that rocky outpost there, outcropping. Which a lot of the coast all along the British Isles is very rocky.
Very rocky, yeah. Oh. I don't think they do have a nice beach, what is it, in Bath, maybe? I forget. I know they do have a couple of nice beach
Oh, yeah,
areas.
well,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Brighton
too,
Beach
yeah.
is the one you're thinking of, maybe.
Oh, this is
Now
beautiful.
then the
Look at
next
this.
stop that we visited was Waterford, and this was the cathedral in Waterford.
Now, Waterford would be in Ireland, you're
That's
saying?
in Ireland. We went,
Yep.
went across the edge of the tip of, we went off a little piece of the Atlantic Ocean, very smooth again. Was afraid we might gonna test seasickness that night, but we didn't. I thought I took a pill and it turned out I dropped it on the floor. And, so and now I think we have some music in this one. This was a video of the organ. Can you get the volume up on that a little bit? This is inside
Yes,
that.
watching the show.
Okay, better, yeah. So that's the organ, and I scanned around a little bit around the cathedral there. It was a very beautiful. It turns out Cornwall is actually one of the oldest. I think it might be the oldest town in Ireland, settled by the Vikings.
Oh, the Vikings settled it.
Yeah, originally, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I
There's a
wish I
tower
knew
coming
more
up.
history.
Yeah, I'll show you. Well, there'll be one key piece here coming up. But first, when you're in Cornwall, when you're in Waterford, you think of Waterford
Yes.
Crystal. So we went through the factory. They have gorgeous displays of the crystal glass.
It's hard to believe, but that's all sparkling glass, all fit in tiny little pieces together.
That's
perfectly.
the national football championship trophy, collegiate football trophy that they make. And that's a harp. It's in the Guinness.
You just can't get a good enough picture of that glass.
beauty.
It was just so beautiful. It really was.
And that is Elsa holding a piece of the ball that drops on.
Oh, yes. They make the ball for Times Square.
And it's all made of these little triangles.
Yep.
And I got to hold it. So it must have smashed in New York City, right?
Doesn't. They
Now,
drop
did
it
you
safely.
buy a little
They
something
drop it
there?
safely?
No.
No?
No.
We
Okay.
took the pictures.
No, we just.
This is
decided-
one of the artisans displaying something that had just come off the line. Very carefully.
I find Ireland a beautiful country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I always tell people if they didn't have the issues with the famine, I don't think we'd have any Irish people in Massachusetts.
That's probably true.
No,
We had a
it's such
lovely
pretty-
tour of that
It really
with-
is. It's so beautiful, and the Irish people are so gracious and friendly. I can't
they went-
imagine leaving,
and they
except
went-
unless you're starving.
Well,
Yeah, our previous trip to Ireland, we covered a lot of that. We went with
We
Don
covered
White,
a
the
lot.
entertainer, and he had 25 of his fans, and we did a bus trip around Ireland before.
and we went to the museum of the
Oh, where they-
starvation
yeah, right,
museum.
yes.
Oh.
Really.
Yeah.
They have a museum in Ireland, and that was so hard to look at.
This is them working on the glass. And right next to the museum, they have, right next to the factory, they have several museums, and this is a museum of the history of, they have the oldest piece of glass that they made there, that
Oh,
clock.
so the company is that old?
Yeah, oh yeah, it goes back
I
to the
didn't know that.
1800s,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's had a rocky history through, it hasn't been continuously operated. There was a period there where it was shut down, but this woman was dressed in costume and gave us a period to walk through this old house. And that clock on the right, there was actually a glass, they had made a glass clock that we saw in the museum. That was one of their oldest clocks in Ireland, I think. This is Reginald's Tower, and that was built by the Norsemen. The original one was built around 900, was rebuilt in the 1300s, and that gives an indication of, it's been a million different things through the ages, but they were working on it now. You couldn't go in it, but. Then we went from Dublin. We went back across the Waterford. We went back across the Irish
Which
Sea
isn't
again.
far from Dublin, by the way.
We
What's
went
Waterford, about 60 miles
Well,
from
instead of
Dublin?
going directly up to Dublin, we went back across to Wales.
Yep.
We crossed the Irish Sea about 4 times, and we went to Holyhead, and there was an old fort there, which is pictured here, and that again is showing the ancient, how old the culture is there, and the wall there, and the ivy growing on it. And we went inside there, and there was a chapel, an old chapel that we went in. It was actually they had a service going on when we quietly snuck in the back. And this is the name of a town with the longest names.
Leonville, Pool, Gwen, Gil, Goga, Okorn, Dobko, Landas, Lillo, Gogo, Gok.
Well, listen,
How'd I do? Pretty
listen, we're going to find out because we took a train ride. That's a train station. If you think it's hard to find Fenway on the Green Line, you know, imagine having to read this. But so we went into a very lovely restaurant in a hotel, and the waitress coming up soon will tell us exactly how to say that. That's a train stop. And there's how many letters in that?
Numerous.
I asked her how many letters there were in it. She said too many. And that's the sign again. Now that restaurant that we went in was the Queen Victoria Hotel.
Oh.
And they had this gorgeous garden out and back with a number of just beautiful plants. Probably the prettiest flowers we've ever seen, you know.
Gorgeous. And the restaurant was wonderful.
And this is back in
This is in Holyhead in Wales.
in Wales.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's our son Jim and Elsa standing out in front of the Victoria. Somebody gave us a tip to go there for lunch. We had the loveliest
was
little
great
lunch there
tip.
with this
It was
very
wonderful.
local foods, and this is another one of the part of the floral displays there. And it was right overlooking the bridge and the water. It was a beautiful view
Oh,
from
it's
the
just
garden
gorgeous.
out back. And this is in Dublin, and this is the
Oh,
Guinness
the
Storehouse.
Yes.
We were in there on our previous trip, but you can see the
that
line.
is
Look at the
number
line.
one attraction, I think, in the whole country.
I think it
Number one
is.
tourist
It is.
attraction.
It's a 9-story building, and
Yep.
you go up to the top, and they give you a glass of Guinness. At the time we were there, they had a fire alarm, and we all had to leave.
Oh.
But this is inside the museum in Dublin. This was the Dublin Museum that we were in.
I love Dublin.
And that's just one of the windows they had inside the museum. Elsa made stained glass, and now we've gone up to. No, we're still in Dublin. That's a pub in Dublin. That's right. We're walking
Didn't
down.
Dublin remind you a little bit of Boston?
Oh,
the
very
archi-
much so. Yeah. And you could have been in Southie for that. Where are we now? This is in.
Greyfriars.
I think we're in Edinburgh. Bobby was a dog that was a dog of someone who died and was buried in the Greyfriars Cemetery. And Bobby, the dog, stood outside the cemetery gate for years until he finally
Really?
died. And they have a little statue of Bobby there. There's Elsa touching it for good luck. This is in Edinburgh.
This must be on the ship.
Yeah, this was in Dublin on the ship where they had an Irish. Someone came out and played the flute, and they actually were singing. They actually did that Leonard Cohen song "Hallelujah" on the place. She played it on the flute. I mean, on the
Harp.
on the harp, and sang it as well. I think that's a video that played it.
Now this is in
This
Dublin?
is No, this is now Belfast. This is the City Hall in Belfast, Northern
Beautiful.
Ireland.
Beautiful.
The capital of Northern Ireland. Now, in Belfast, we were advised to take a little train up to a little village called Hillsborough, where they had a gorgeous garden, and they had the castle where the royals actually stay when they're in Northern Ireland. It was the Hills Castle in Hillsborough, and all the people who've lived there were named Arthur. And there was Arthur the first, second, third, fourth. This is a garden they had. They had a 100-acre garden there. And that's the
there's
royal
the royal
family.
family.
There's all the heirs of the British throne with Charles and William, and now William's son.
Oh, isn't that it? Oh, I see. They just have
This is the
who would be the kings.
Right. This is the formal dining room. Those are the chairs where royalty sit when they have an audience with their subjects, I guess. They had a lot of great artwork in the building. It was art. The art pieces were generally 6 inches apart. But they had this picture of King George the third, I guess, that was the guy that we overthrew and I had to take a picture of that portrait. And that's the train that we took in Wales.
And that train took you where?
Well, that train took us past that funny town that had the long name and took us out to where we had the lovely lunch.
So
and gave
was
us
this
around
train
Wales.
like a tourist train?
This was just we just took a local train. This was
Just
one of
to see what it looked
This
like.
is one of our self-followed tours.
Oh,
that we
okay.
took. We like to do that. And this was the garden at Hillsborough. That little thing in the back was actually designed and built by Prince Charles.
Little pagoda-like.
I love that tree. I always have loved, they cut the tree branches so that the tree is all flat and stands up against the wall. So that tree is alive.
That's a pear tree. You can see the fruit
pear
growing
tree,
on it.
yeah. I just love it when a wall is covered like that. It was beautiful.
Oh, look at that, and your shirt matches the flowers.
And we didn't plan it that way.
Talk
I
about
had
dressing
no
for the
idea.
scene.
There were two women doing garden work in that garden, and I think they were I think they must have thought that I wore that because of the flowers. But
I thought she grew up in the garden, but she has such a green thumb. I wouldn't have been surprised. That's another one of the.
oh, I love that picture.
These pictures that I took vertically, in order to show them on the screen, they have to kind of put in they have to do that sort of tribute on the side there that make
That's all right.
It reminds artists that are doing pictures for subsequent TV to always take
These
them
flowers
horizontal.
all look like flowers we get here in New England. though.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
This was in September.
And things were still blooming. And
Yeah,
everything.
some was. Yeah, the rose garden didn't have much left, but
No.
they did have something. And while we were in Belfast, it was Elsa's birthday, and so our son and daughter, that's Jim and Sharon, they surprised her with a little birthday dinner in this restaurant that you always ask about food, Jack. And this
I
place,
do.
their specialty here was that at your table they gave you they had a heated piece of stone, and they actually cooked the meat right on the stone in front of you.
Yep.
Seared it anyway, and
No, they cook right on the stone,
Yeah.
the thin strips of steak and stuff.
that's having a little sip before dinner, and
Looks like a nice looking restaurant.
it was lovely. It was very nice, and right in downtown Belfast. And the bus was out right at the time. Downton Abbey the movie had just come out, so they love the idea.
Did you get a chance to talk to locals about politics at all? How they seem to be getting along
Good
or not
question.
getting along?
Yeah, a little bit. It was mixed. It's just like in this country, very partisan. Some people hated Johnson. They all said he was very Trump-like, which he is, I think, very outspoken. And but he won again by a big margin when they forced an election, and he pushed Brexit through. But yeah, that was kind of the thing that you got to either pro-Brexit, pro-Johnson.
But they didn't talk about the Irish versus the Northern Irish.
Well, yes.
Well,
I'm glad you asked that, because when we were in Northern Ireland, Jim and Sharon took a tour through one of the Irish parts of Belfast.
Okay.
And the Irish in Belfast have been put down very much so by the British rule there, but they still have these very restricted neighborhoods that they live in. And Jim and Sharon said it was a fascinating tour that they took. They also went to a museum of the Titanic that they have there, which we didn't do.
There's a museum for
Yeah,
that?
it's gorgeous. I kind of
Really?
Yeah, we didn't do that. We decided to do the tour up to that
I had
castle.
no idea. So there's a
instead.
Titanic museum. And it
Yeah.
shows how the ship was built and all that.
Yes, because it was
I
built
think
there.
it was built in
It was,
Belfast,
yeah, and it talks about a lot of that. And so
Oh.
Jim and Sharon loved both of those.
I
Now,
hope
this
they weren't
is-
nervous to get back on your ship.
When we landed at the Isle of Skye, our ship had to sit out in the harbor while we took a little
Tender.
tender. They loaded us into these tenders, and we had a little tender ride into Portree. Is where we landed on the Isle of Skye, and that's a very rocky little town, and that's the harbor.
Looks
at
picturesque.
Portree. Very picturesque,
Very.
and very local.
We were so lucky we didn't have much rain, hardly
Yeah, no,
at
you had-
all.
yeah.
And that's unheard of.
Now, do most of these people live there year round, or are they seasonal guests? Summertime or something?
There were beaches that
A
looked
mix.
like there might be visitors, but
The
but I
farmers,
think
I'm
mostly,
assuming,
Yeah.
are there year round.
This
raising
is
sheep
a
and
ride
stuff.
through the Isle of Skye, and it was foggy kind of the day we went, and a ride out through the countryside. That was just very typical. We took a public bus again, all around the route. They had a loop bus that went all around the isle, around this part of the Isle of Skye. And it was a fascinating ride. It was
Well,
just
you know,
very
if you said I
scenic.
want to live somewhere kind of quiet, not too many people bothering me, there's good places to go.
That's right.
There's some of the heather growing up along a wall. Now the wall is actually on two sides there, and it was kind of a the picture doesn't quite get it, but it shows the heather. But the walls, the way they would built their walls was pretty fascinating.
It sounds to me like this was a terrific trip.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
And this was one of the first, well, you had said you hadn't cruised in quite a few years.
First cruise, we had taken a riverboat cruise on a small ride, but this was the
ocean
first.
cruise.
Yeah.
So now you're ready to book another one.
But not on a ship any bigger than this.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
We were talking, folks, a little bit before we got started today, and I said, I've been on those big, big ships, and if you're way at one end and you got to go to the other end, it's a hike. Yeah. Although today I think they're designing some of them even where they have separate dining rooms near
Probably.
Yes.
some of
I'm
the
sure they
suites.
do. I'm
Yeah.
sure
Yeah,
they do.
so you don't have to go
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah, no, this worked out great. The entertainment wasn't overcrowded. And the entertainment was big enough, so the entertainment was the
Was
biggest
stunning.
surprise
I
to
will
me.
tell you, the photos were terrific.
Well, thank you.
The islands just look so picturesque and beautiful, and I just want to thank you so much for coming. I know we
Well,
had a
thank
little
you,
trouble
Jack.
with the weather today and getting everything going, but I hope you'll be back for another visit with us and share your trips with us because it's just great.
Well, it's great that you do this show on Access TV. It's a perfect example of local, being able for locals to be able to share some of their stuff.
Well, I
So
love
thank
to
you
do
for
it.
having
I'm
us.
happy to share it with everybody and they get educated on where they want to go on their next trip. So thank you again,
Okay.
and thank our viewers for watching.